Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am so happy you are here with me again. Take a slow breath. Get comfortable. Maybe you are at home tonight. Maybe you are walking, or resting, or lying in your bed. Wherever you are, let yourself relax. Tonight, we have a beautiful story to share. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Just for a moment. Imagine you are hiding inside a large rolled carpet. It is dark. You cannot move. You can barely breathe. A man is carrying you on his shoulder. Walks past soldiers. Walks through tall doors. If the soldiers find you, they will kill you. But you are not afraid. You have a plan. You are going to meet the most powerful man in the world. Who would do something so dangerous? Who would be so brave and so clever? A young queen. A queen who lost her kingdom and wanted it back. A queen who spoke many languages. A queen who used her mind like a weapon. Her name was Cleopatra. Tonight I will tell you her story. It is a story of books and battles. It is a story of love and loss. It is a story about a woman who lived more than 2,000 years ago, but who we still remember today. So stay with me. Listen slowly. Let the words come to you gently, one by one. Our story begins in a beautiful city by the sea. The city was called Alexandria. Alexandria was in Egypt, in the north of Africa. But it did not look like the rest of Egypt. That was a Greek city. It had wide streets. It had white buildings. It had a tall lighthouse that sailors could see from far away. It had the most famous library in the whole world. Cleopatra was born in this city in the year 69 BC. That is a very long time ago. More than 2,000 years. Her family was the royal family of Egypt. They were kings and queens. We call a king or queen of old Egypt a pharaoh. Pharaoh was the ruler of all the land. But here is something strange. Cleopatra's family was not Egyptian. They were Greek. Many years before, a Greek general took control of Egypt. His family stayed and ruled for almost 300 years. They were called the Ptolemy family. This long line of rulers from one family has a name. We call it a dynasty. A dynasty is a family that rules a country for many years, passing power from parent to child. Cleopatra was born into this dynasty, not a princess. One day she could be queen. But life in this family was not safe. It was not gentle. In this family, brothers and sisters fought each other. Sometimes they even married each other to keep the power inside the family. Brothers killed brothers. Others feared their own sons. Everyone wanted the throne. Everyone wanted to rule. So Cleopatra grew up in a beautiful palace. Yes, but it was a dangerous place. A child in this family had to be careful. A child had to be clever. And Cleopatra was very, very clever. From a young age, Cleopatra loved to learn. While other royal children played, she read. She asked questions, wanted to understand everything. She studied in the great library of Alexandria. A library is a place full of books, where people go to read and to study. But this was not a small library. This was the greatest library in the ancient world. It held thousands and thousands of books. Scholars came from far away to read there. And little Cleopatra walked among these books and these wise people. And she listened, and she learned. She learned mathematics. She learned about the stars. She learned philosophy. Philosophy is the study of big questions, like what is good, and how should we live. These are hard questions, even for adults. But Cleopatra loved them. And most all, she learned languages. Cleopatra could speak many languages. She spoke Greek, the language of her family. But she also learned the language of the Egyptian people. This was special. Most of her family never bothered to learn it. They ruled Egypt for 300 years, but they never spoke the language of the people they ruled. Cleopatra was different. She wanted to talk to her people directly. She wanted them to feel that she was truly their queen. People said she could speak with traders from Arabia, with people from far-off lands, with almost anyone who came to her court, each in their own tongue. Imagine that. Not a young woman who could open her mouth and speak to the whole world. This was her great gift. Not her face, not her gold. No, her mind. But a sharp mind could not fix every problem. And Egypt had a very big problem. And Egypt was rich. The land along the great river Nile gave food every year. The country had gold. It had grain. It had treasure. But Egypt was no longer strong. Its armies were weak. And far across the sea, a new power was rising. A power that wanted everything Egypt had. That power was Rome. Rome was a city in Italy, across the sea. But Rome was growing fast. The Roman armies were strong and well trained. One by one, Rome took control of other lands. Kings became servants of Rome. Whole countries lost their freedom. And everyone, everywhere, was afraid of Rome. At this time, Rome was not ruled by a king, was a republic. Republic is a country with no king, where powerful men share the rule and make decisions together. The most powerful Romans were generals and senators, and the most powerful generals all wanted more land, more money, more glory. Egypt was rich and weak. Rome was poor for treasure but strong in war. You can see the danger. The rich, weak country and the strong, hungry neighbor. It was only a matter of time. Cleopatra's father understood this danger. I tried to keep Rome happy. I gave Rome money. He gave Rome gifts. Almost begged for Rome's friendship. But the Romans did not respect him. Behind his back, they laughed at him. They gave him a cruel nickname. They called him the flute player, because he liked music more than war. To be a king and to be laughed at, that is a sad thing. And Cleopatra saw it all. When Cleopatra was 18 years old, her father died. This was the year 51 BC. Now everything changed. By the rules of the family, Cleopatra became queen. But she could not rule alone. She had to share the throne. The throne is the special chair of a king or queen. It is also a word we use for the power itself. To share the throne means to rule together with someone else. And who did Cleopatra have to share it with? Her younger brother. His name was Ptolemy too. There were many kings with that name. He was only 10 years old. Done, a little boy. So now Egypt had two rulers, a clever young woman of 18 and a child of 10. They were co-rulers. A co-ruler is one of two people who rule at the same time. You can guess what happened. At first things looked calm. The queen and the boy king sat together. But the real power was with Cleopatra. She met the foreign visitors. She made the decisions. I controlled the money. Name went first, on official papers. She acted like the true ruler of Egypt, because she was. But her brother was not really making these choices. He was a child. Behind him stood a group of powerful men. These men were his advisors. An advisor is a person who tells a ruler what to do, who whispers in the ruler's ear. These advisors did not want a strong queen. A strong queen did not need them, but a little boy did. If they controlled the boy, they controlled Egypt. So these men began to work against Cleopatra. Not quietly, not patiently. They spread unkind stories about her. They told the people she cared only about herself. They said she did not respect the old ways. They turned the boy king against his own sister. Day by day they took her power away. And then, after about 3 years, they won. They forced Cleopatra to leave. She had to run for her life. She fled from Egypt to the land of Syria, far to the east. Think about this. She was only 21 years old, had been a queen. Now she had nothing. No palace, no army, no crown. She was a queen with no kingdom, alone in a foreign land. Many people would have given up. Many people would have cried and hidden and disappeared from history. Not Cleopatra. That is not who she was. In Syria, Cleopatra did not sit and weep. She made a plan. Was going to take back her throne. She needed soldiers, so she went looking for them. She spoke to local leaders. She made promises. She used her famous voice, her many languages, her sharp mind. Slowly, she gathered an army, a denta. She was preparing to march back into Egypt and fight her own brother for the crown. This time in her life has a name. It was her exile. Exile is when a person is forced to live away from their own home or country, often as a punishment. Cleopatra was in exile, but she treated it not as an ending. She treated it as a beginning. And then, far away, something happened that would change her whole life. Great Roman general came to Egypt. His name was Julius Caesar. You may have heard this name before. Caesar was one of the most powerful and most famous men in the whole world. General is the leader of an army, the man who commands the soldiers, and Caesar was the greatest general of his time. Why did Caesar come to Egypt? He was chasing an enemy. Rome was fighting a war inside itself, Roman against Roman. Caesar's rival was another great general called Pompey. Caesar had beaten Pompey in battle, and Pompey had run away. Pompey ran all the way to Egypt. I thought Egypt would protect him. But the Egyptians were his friends. Not he was wrong. When Pompey landed in Egypt, the boy king's advisors were waiting. They killed him. They cut off his head. They thought this gift would please the mighty Caesar. They thought Caesar would thank them. But when Caesar arrived, he did not smile. He was not pleased. Pompey had been his enemy, yes, but Pompey was also a great Roman, and once even his friend. To kill him in this low and ugly way disgusted Caesar. The advisors had made a terrible mistake. Now Caesar was in Alexandria. I moved into the royal palace. I was angry. He was powerful. And he was right in the middle of Egypt's troubles. And Cleopatra, far away in exile, heard the news. She understood at once. This was her chance. Not perhaps her only chance. If she could speak to Caesar, really speak to him, woman to man, mind to mind, she could win him to her side. And with Rome behind her, she could be queen again. But there was a wall in her way. Her brother's men held the city. They held the palace. If Cleopatra came near, they would catch her and kill her before she said a single word. She could not march in. She could not walk through the gate. She needed to reach Caesar in secret. needed to appear inside the palace, right in front of him, before anyone could stop her. She made a daring plan, a plan so strange and so bold that people still tell it today. One night, a small boat slipped quietly across the water to the palace. A single man stepped out. Over his shoulder, he carried a large rolled-up carpet, tied with rope. I said he was bringing a gift for the great Caesar. The guards looked at the carpet. They saw nothing strange. Rug a present, nothing more. They let him pass. The man carried the heavy carpet through the palace halls. He came to Caesar's room. Set the carpet down on the floor. Then he loosened the rope and unrolled it. Out came Cleopatra. Can you imagine Caesar's face? This Roman general had seen many things. He had seen great battles and great cities, but he had never seen anything like this. A young queen rolled up in a carpet, appearing in his room out of nowhere. She had risked her life, had outsmarted the guards, had walked right past the men who wanted her dead. Caesar was a hard man, but he was not made of stone. Was impressed. Here was courage. So was cleverness. And then she began to speak. You talked to him in his own language, talked about Egypt, about its troubles, about its riches. She told him how her brother's advisors were ruining the country, told him she was the rightful queen, and she did it all with charm, with wit, with intelligence. Fashion, she was 21. He was past 50. But the years did not matter. By the end of that night, Caesar had chosen his side. Would help Cleopatra. Did they fall in love? Some say yes. Some say she only used him and he only used her. Maybe it was both. The heart and the plan can live together. But whatever was in their hearts, the result was the same. The most powerful man in the world now stood with the exiled queen. Caesar declared that Cleopatra should rule again beside her brother, as their father had wished. But the boy king's advisors would not accept this. They were furious. So they did the only thing left to them. They went to war. The Egyptian army surrounded the palace. Caesar had only a small group of Roman soldiers with him. They were trapped inside, badly outnumbered. It was a frightening time. There was fighting in the streets and fire in the harbor. The harbor is the place by the water where ships come in and rest. During the fighting, fire spread through the harbor, and many ships burned. Some people say the flames reached the great library, and that many precious books were lost forever. We cannot be sure, but it is a painful thought. All that knowledge turning to ash. The fighting went on for months. It was hard, and it was dangerous. And more than once it could have ended badly for Caesar and Cleopatra, both. But at last, fresh Roman soldiers arrived. They broke the Egyptian army. The boy king tried to flee across the river Nile, but his boat was too full, and it sank not, and he drowned in the brown water. And so Cleopatra was queen once more. The girl who had been rolled up in a carpet now sat on the throne of Egypt, safe, with the power of Rome at her back. After the war, Caesar stayed in Egypt for a time. He and Cleopatra traveled together up the great river Nile. They sailed past the ancient temples. They saw the pyramids, already old beyond counting, standing silent in the sun. For a little while, the danger was far away, and there was peace. Cleopatra had a child, a son. She named him Caesarion, which means Little Caesar. She said the boy's father was Julius Caesar himself. a queen with a son by the most powerful man in Rome. That was a strong card to hold. Later, Cleopatra traveled to Rome to be with Caesar. She wanted the Romans to see her. She wanted them to know her power. She stayed in Caesar's grand house outside the city. But many Romans did not like this at all. They did not trust this foreign queen. They worried that Caesar was becoming too powerful, more like a king than a Roman should ever be. And Rome, you remember, hated kings. Then came a terrible day. In the year 44 BC, a group of Roman senators surrounded Julius Caesar. A senator was one of the powerful men who helped rule Rome. These senators feared that Caesar wanted to make himself a king. So they drew their knives and they killed him. They stabbed him again and again, right in the heart of Rome. The word for killing an important leader like this is to assassinate. Caesar was assassinated by the very men who sat beside him in power. Cleopatra was in Rome when it happened. Suddenly, her great protector was gone. Suddenly, Rome was a dangerous place for a foreign queen and her little son. She did not wait, gathered Caesarion, and hurried home to Egypt, back across the sea, to safety. But Caesar's death did not bring peace, brought a new struggle for power. Who would rule Rome now? Two men rose above the rest. One was a young man named Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. The other was a tough, popular general named Mark Antony, who had been Caesar's loyal friend. These two men hunted down the senators who had killed Caesar, and they won. Then they divided the Roman world between them, like two brothers dividing a house. Octavian took the western half. Mark Antony took the eastern half, and the rich kingdom of Egypt lay in the east, in Mark Antony's half. Now Mark Antony needed money. Armies are expensive. Soldiers must be paid and fed. And where was their money? In Egypt. Mark Antony sent a message to Cleopatra. He asked the Queen of Egypt to come and meet him. Cleopatra knew how to make an entrance. She had learned that not long ago, with a carpet and a clever plan. This time, she did the opposite of hiding. This time, she wanted to be seen. She sailed to meet Mark Antony in a city called Tarsus, and she did not come quietly. She came on a magnificent ship. Sails were purple. The oars were silver. Sweet smoke rose from the deck, and music played across the water. Cleopatra herself sat dressed like a goddess, calm and shining. People left the town and ran to the shore just to look at her. Mark Antony was waiting to meet a queen who needed his help. Instead, the whole world seemed to stop and stare at her. Just as it had been with Caesar, the two of them grew close very quickly. They became partners. They became lovers. Was it love? Was it need? Antony wanted Egypt's gold for his armies. Cleopatra wanted Rome's strength to protect her throne and her children. Each one had something the other needed. And somewhere between the gold and the power, real feeling grew. They spent their days together in feasts and celebrations. In time, Cleopatra had 3 more children, his children, twins, a boy and a girl, and later 1 more boy. But far away in Rome, the other ruler was watching. Octavian was watching, and he was angry. Octavian saw his chance, or began to speak against Mark Antony. He told the Roman people that Antony had forgotten Rome. They said Antony loved a foreign queen more than his own country. They said Cleopatra was a danger, a witch, a woman who wanted to rule Rome itself. Little by little, with clever words, Octavian turned the Roman people against Antony and against Cleopatra. I made them an enemy. And then he made war. In the year 31 BC, the two sides met in a great sea battle near a place called Actium. Hundreds of ships came together on the water. Antony and Cleopatra had a large fleet. A fleet is a large group of ships that fight together. Octavian had a fleet too, and his were faster, and his commander was clever. The battle was hard, and it was going badly for Antony and Cleopatra. Then, in the middle of the fighting, Cleopatra's ships suddenly turned. They pulled away. They sailed off, away from the battle, toward Egypt. Antony, seeing her go, left his own fleet behind and followed her. Why did she leave? People have argued about it for 2,000 years. Was it fear? Was it a plan that failed? Was she trying to save her ships for later? We do not know. But to the soldiers left behind, it looked like one thing only. It looked like their leaders had run away. They felt betrayed. To betray someone is to break their trust, to turn against the people who counted on you. Antony's men felt betrayed, and many of them gave up and joined Octavian. But the battle was lost. Antony and Cleopatra sailed home to Egypt. They knew the truth now. They knew that Octavian would come for them. So they tried to get ready. They looked for friends, for allies. An ally is a person or a country that helps you and fights on your side. But this time no allies came. Octavian was too strong now and too feared. No one wanted to stand against him. Antony and Cleopatra were alone. The next year, Octavian's army reached Egypt. There was one last battle, and Antony lost again. And then a cruel and tangled thing happened. A false message reached Antony. The message said that Cleopatra was dead. It was not true, but Antony believed it. Not technology, the thought of living without her was more than he could bear. In his grief, he took his own sword, and he turned it against himself. But Cleopatra was alive. When she learned what he had done, it was too late to stop it. Her servants carried the dying Antony to her, and there, in her arms, with the woman he loved holding him close, Mark Antony died. Now Cleopatra was truly alone. Octavian's soldiers took her. He treated her politely, but make no mistake, she was a prisoner, and she understood exactly what he planned to do with her. Octavian wanted to take her back to Rome, wanted to lead her through the streets in chains, a captured queen, so the Roman crowds could point and laugh. The proud queen of Egypt, the last of her great dynasty, paraded like a prize. For Cleopatra, this was worse than death. Had been a ruler all her life. She would not end it as a thing on display. So she made one last choice. The final decision of a woman who had spent her whole life deciding for herself. On a day in August, in the year 30 BC, Cleopatra died. Was 39 years old. How exactly she died, no one was for certain. Some say a poisonous snake was brought to her in a basket of fruit, and that it bit her. Some say she used poison another way. But everyone agrees on the most important part. She chose her own ending. Octavian did not get to decide it. Fortune she did. And with her death, something very old came to an end. Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt. After her, there were no more Egyptian kings, no more Egyptian queens. Octavian took Egypt and made it part of the Roman world. The dynasty that had ruled for 300 years was finished. The girl from the great library the queen in the carpet, was the last of her line. So why do we still tell her story after more than 2,000 years? Not because she was beautiful. Other people were beautiful. Not because she was rich. Other people were rich. We remember Cleopatra because of her mind. In a world full of powerful men, she used the one thing no one could take from her. She used her intelligence. She read the books. She learned the languages. Studied the world until she understood it better than the men around her. When she had no army and no crown, she still had her mind, and with her mind she walked right into the room of the most powerful man on earth. I want you to remember that carpet. Remember the young queen, rolled up in the dark, carried into a room where she was not supposed to be. Was afraid, surely, but she went anyway, found a way into a room that was closed to her. Learning a new language is a little like that. Right now, English may feel like a great palace with the doors shut. The guards are the hard words, the grammar, the fear of making mistakes. It can feel like you are not allowed inside. But every story you listen to is a small, brave step toward that door. Every new word you learn is a hand on the rope, loosening it, opening the way. You do not need to be fearless. Cleopatra was not fearless. You only need to keep going, one word at a time, till one day the door opens, and you are standing inside, speaking. You are doing that right now. Right now, by listening to this story in English, you are walking past the guards. You are stepping into the palace, and I am so proud of you for it. Now I have a question for you, and I would love to read your answer in the comments. Which part of Cleopatra's story stayed in your heart the most? Which one? A. The clever queen learning every language in the great library. B. The brave young woman rolled inside the carpet, meeting Caesar. The proud queen at the very end, choosing her own way. Write A, B, or C below and tell me why. If this story helped you, please give it a like. It truly helps our little channel grow, not by technology. If you would like to hear more stories like this one, please subscribe, so we can keep walking through history together. There is a person from the past you would like to meet next. Tell me their name in the comments. I rate them all. Mione, thank you for spending time with me tonight, my friend. Not keep listening, or keep learning. Not to keep staying brave through every door that English opens for you. Till next time.